Hello and welcome to this episode of Perspective on Athletics, Big Thinking for Small Colleges. I'm Mark Majewski, and I host these episodes each week where we discuss relevant issues to the management and leadership of intercollegiate athletics today. We focus primarily on the small college environment, but there's something for everybody. So sit back and enjoy this episode, and be sure to check us out on iTunes. You can subscribe there so you'll never miss an episode and get all of our past episodes as well as you can on our own website at MajewskiAthleticConsulting.com. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Perspective on Athletics. Okay, well, welcome to this week's version of Perspective on Athletics. I'm Mark Majewski, and I host these webcasts every week, and the second Tuesday of each month, which is today, we go live, and we are doing that today. And we're also going with video today and recording this so that we'll have a video version with the PowerPoint slides, as well as the ability to see my face, which is something new and different for you guys. But we're going to go ahead and do this. We'll always have the audio version available as well. You can subscribe on iTunes. Go ahead and check us out there. Or you can always see these episodes on our website as well at MajewskiAthleticConsulting.com. We want to go ahead and get going today, though. We are talking today about something that is the second in a three-part series related to athletics on small college campuses and how many small colleges misunderstand what athletics is about and how it can impact their campus in a very positive way. And today, we're talking about the way that athletics is integrated into campus and how it fits, and the people that work there, their perceptions about what athletics is and maybe what it isn't, and how that impacts the entire campus, the athletic program, and especially the student athletes who participate in that program. So we're talking about, stop treating college athletic programs like high school sports, which is what happens on many campuses, with a lack of understanding or with a fear of what athletics might be in their minds for their campus. These types of things keep people confined and restrict their thinking in a way that really leads to a lot of missed opportunities for small college campuses. Now, I'm not talking about the Ohio States of the world. I'm talking about the small colleges, small liberal arts colleges in particular, but any smaller program, enrollments 5,000 or less, where the number of student athletes participating really is significant, anywhere from 15 to 30, 35, 40% or more in some cases. And for that type of number of students to be participating, that is something that is very important to that campus, and it impacts many, many things that go on. And so I think the issue here I'm trying to convey is there are many campuses that are really missing out on an opportunity to utilize athletics for the overall institutional benefit and to support its mission, purpose, and the work that it does day in and day out. So let's go ahead and jump in here and get going. I think the first challenge here, and I'm going to walk through some points that I think are important that need to be discussed and hopefully give you a few strategies to address them, but also leave you with, I think, some action steps that you can take so that if some of these things I'm talking about today ring true for you and your program, that you can take these things and put them to work on your campus and hopefully make a positive impact and get athletics at least being talked about and in a better position to really serve its purpose for your campus. The first challenge really is, I think, people need to think differently. And what happens is there is general ignorance sometimes. People just don't have a clue what athletics really is at the college level. They maybe were never an athlete themselves, so they just don't have any concept. Sometimes people are thinking about athletics in a way that is not representative of what college sports is today. Maybe they're thinking about a model when they were back in college, and that could have been 30, 40, 50 years ago in some cases, and they just don't understand. And for some, it's also fear, where they're somewhat aware of what athletics is, and they hear about the evils and the bad things that are happening on some bigger campuses, the NCAA Division One level, the things they read in the newspaper, see on TV, and they just are fearful that if athletics receives any attention or support, that that's what's going to happen on your campus too. And so these things limit thinking. They confine people's thinkings, and they really close people's minds down. So people need to think differently about what athletics is. The second thing that happens is, largely because of the first point I made, is that athletics programs are not managed properly in a way that supports even the essential needs to run a program. And for those that are working in a college athletic program, when you're trying to do things without the proper tools, your work, your efforts seem futile. And no matter what you try, you end up running into a brick wall or an insurmountable hurdle that you just can't get over or get around or under. And you just start to feel, why do I continue banging my head against the wall when nobody's really getting it? And what happens is that leads to turnover in coaches, in athletic directors, and other staff. And ultimately, it happens with student athletes as well. If they come in expecting a certain level of program and all of a sudden there's no support there, they're going to have a very different feeling about why they're at that college, and in some cases will impact retention in a negative way, where typically student athletes retain and persist at a much higher level than the general student. And thirdly, I think these things all add up to a huge missed opportunity for small college campuses. Athletics touches so many areas of campus, touches alumni, the local community, and it reaches potential students in a way that traditional marketing and recruiting activities for a college just cannot. And colleges that don't recognize the power of athletics in these areas are really missing out. And some colleges these days, with rise in tuition costs and the financial challenges families are facing, enrollment is becoming a really, really big issue for many small colleges, to the point of, can we stay open? Do we have to cut positions? And when you're in that situation, athletics usually comes to the forefront of, well, we're spending too much money on athletics, when the opposite, I think, should be true. How can we better support athletics to help ourselves utilize the attributes that athletics has to help our overall institutional mission here? So I think these are three things that come into play. Now, the first one I think we were talking about just a bit ago was this misunderstanding. People just do not understand what athletics is, how it fits in, and they just sometimes don't want to know. Some people love it, some people hate it. There's a whole bunch in between. Okay, but for a lot of folks on a small college campus, they think about athletics from what they know, and maybe what they know goes all the way back to high school, where middle school, where they may have played a sport, or maybe it was just a PE class, but they knew who the athletes were. They knew who some of these coaches were. And in their minds, they're thinking, well, athletics is something that you do after school. It's once the important work of school is done, then you go play, have your fun, and that's the time to do that, and it doesn't really fit within the regular mold of what education should be. And I think we all know that that is not true, but some people are caught in that mindset. And I think that what needs to happen here is, if you haven't done this, you need to be able to articulate the role athletics plays and the role of the coaches, and more importantly, the role that athletics participation plays in the lives and in the educational experience of your student athletes. Many small colleges have 200-300 student athletes, and that's a substantial portion of the undergraduate population, like I already said. And for those students, athletics plays a much bigger role than some extracurricular type of activity. It's a big part of the reason they're at the college, and they spend many, many hours each week committed to that. They're equally committed to their educational experience and their academics as well. But I think people need to understand, and it's up to you, I think, as an administrator, to help gather this information from your student athletes, help articulate the purpose and the role that athletics plays not only on campus but in the lives of your student athletes. Another misunderstanding that many people have is that student athletes somehow are privileged, that they gained admission to the college under a special provision, that they're receiving some sort of special financial aid, that they really are not a typical student for ABC College, but they're there because of sports and they got in. And there's almost a resentment to that fact. And in most cases, especially NCAA Division III, where there are no athletic scholarships, it really is not the case. You know, these students are being admitted under the same standards as all other students, and they belong there. It's just that their passion happens to lie in something other than academics, and people don't see this. And in my work with students, when I conduct focus groups to help departments better understand their student athlete experience, it's amazing to listen to student athletes talk about this, because they get very passionate, they get upset, and they really get on edge when they start talking about the fact that some of their classmates in a particular class think that they're not as smart as they are. And in fact, it gets worse, that they will also talk about how some faculty treat them differently, and some faculty will assume that they are not as smart or as serious a student as other non-athletes in the class. And this really infuriates them. Student athletes at this level, small colleges, are choosing the college for the right reasons. They want to get an education. They want to keep pursuing their passion in sports. And they realize they can do both, where some others are thinking that it's not possible to do both, perhaps. But they get really angry when they feel slighted about, are they on the same academic caliber? And this is something that again, does persist at many small colleges. And again, for you as an administrator, the key here is to start to gather data on a semester by semester basis, and wherever you can, publicize the academic achievements of your student athletes, because it's going to be there. In most cases, student athlete GPAs are on par, within a tenth or a hundredth of 1% of the general student body. Some cases it may be higher for particular teams, and you need to promote these things. Not only will it help your mission of educating your campus community, but it will also make your student athletes feel acknowledged and appreciated for more than their athletic achievements. They want to be taken seriously as students, so give that to them. Lastly, I think a big part of the misunderstanding comes from the power of the media. And there's so much negative things happening out there that people just are bombarded sometimes, and that's all they hear. There seems to be no room for positive stories in the media about the great things that athletics does, even at the big NCAA Division I schools, but especially for small schools. Good is not newsworthy, unfortunately. And a long time ago, I learned that, a great saying, that media doesn't tell people what to think, but it absolutely tells them what to think about. And if all they're getting is the information that is negative about athletics, that's what people are going to be thinking about. That's what they're going to be talking about. And it will lead to these misunderstandings and misperceptions about what athletics is. So again, here's the challenge for you, is to find ways to educate your campus community on the positive things that are happening within all of college athletics, but particularly with your program and your student athletes, and the great things that they are achieving both athletically and academically, and showcase those people and acknowledge them for the good work that they're doing in those areas. The second area talked about was how this misunderstanding often can lead to mismanagement of a program. And what I mean by mismanagement is simply people don't know and understand what it takes to properly run an athletics program at the college level. And sometimes budgets, staffing decisions really seems very arbitrary on some campuses. I've been on campuses where it almost was an afterthought and they realize, oh, we need an athletic director, so we need to pay them some amount of money. They have no idea. They don't do any research. It's budget driven, which is not uncommon, but they respond with simply a budget driven decision rather than looking at what the program is about and what you're trying to do. And I think that is more common than not on a lot of small colleges, is just that decisions have been made to support athletics for a variety of reasons, most of which don't have anything to do with what the core purpose of the athletic program is, and recognizing how it does fit into the overall college. The other thing that I think people on many small colleges can assume sometimes, especially on enrollment dependent or enrollment driven schools, they say, well, yes, let's add a sport or let's start an athletic program and that'll help us get students here. And that's great. And at least they're acknowledging on some level the role that athletics plays in recruitment and enrollment management efforts for the college. However, it usually stops at that level. And they kind of say, well, if we have a sports program, the students will come. You know, if we sponsor track and field, just magically 60 or 70 new students are going to show up on our campus. And they fail to recognize the effort and the work that goes into, one, recruiting those students, but also putting a good product together that is attractive to prospective students. So this is one thing that I think people need help with, but at least they're part of the way in acknowledging how athletics fits. The other argument you hear a lot is that, well, resources need to support a core mission, and that athletics, yeah, it's nice. We got students participating, but it really is not part of our core mission. And unfortunately, those people don't realize that if you look at the mission statement of most small colleges, there's always some sort of reference to the development and growth of the whole person, the total student, their well-being, emotional and physical well-being. There's some reference that really talks about more than just academic pursuits. And you can look at just about any mission statement and find something there. So you need to be able to articulate, again, the ways in which athletics supports the mission of the college and the way it impacts in a positive way the work that the college does in its education of young men and women. And you can do that, but it's not going to be readily acknowledged unless you're able to articulate it. And in many small colleges, it's not. So when it comes time to argue for budgets, for other needs for your program, it's an easy answer to say, well, it's not. We got to focus on our academic pursuits, or we got to focus on these other needs for students. And you need to be armed with the arguments that will justify your case. And you need to be able to advocate in a positive way with some specific examples of why you need the things that you do. You can't just say we need more. You need to show them how, and show them how it supports the overall institutional message. And what happens lastly in this environment here where people don't understand and the program's not supported, you have coaches, athletic directors in some cases that are passionate, and they take these jobs because they want to help. They think they can make a difference. And if they're in an environment where they're constantly running into roadblocks and huge hurdles and they're getting shot down, they eventually get burned out. But before they burn out and leave, they end up trying to figure out some sort of way to help themselves. And what happens is, excuse me, fundraising is a great example. They don't have enough money, and they need some more money to pay for a van or a bus to take a trip, for a conference game. They're going to try to figure out any way they can to make sure that they can get that money. That can lead to some very creative and entrepreneurial efforts with regard to revenue and fundraising generation. And so coaches sometimes will operate outside of the proper university channels, not cheating or illegal ways, but just they may go off and do things on their own because they feel desperate. They need to act because they have been trying to talk through and justify and advocate for their program needs, but there's been no action that has led to anything meaningful. So coaches especially are very strong and willing to take risks, and they will act on their own. And sometimes that can create some conflicts for small colleges, especially if coaches are contacting alumni or parents, where the annual fund typically wants to keep those people under wraps and make sure they're not getting bombarded. Coaches sometimes are operating outside of those annual giving parameters because they feel they need to. It's a desperation mode. So again, here the action item is to be able to get everybody in the same room to talk about this type of environment and make sure that there are ways in which coaches and the athletic department staff can work within the university parameters, because you need to, because the need is there. And if they tell you you can't do this, then you've got bigger problems, but you need to be able to work with your campus folks. And thirdly, all these things lead to missed opportunities for small college campuses. Again, I'm not talking about the Ohio States of the world, the USCs of the world. Athletics plays a very different role at that level. We're talking about the small colleges, small private colleges most of the time, enrollments less than 5,000, where athletics can really add a lot to the campus, and where many campuses are just missing the boat. They're not taking advantage of athletics in a way that could really impact the campus in a positive way. And one that we've touched upon and many people do talk about is enrollment management. You know, the coaching staff, if they are supported and are active in doing their jobs as really required by college coaches, are out there recruiting prospective students. They are identifying the right types of kids. They are admitting them. They are following up. They are building relationships with kids their junior year and senior year, and really sometimes the first opportunity for a prospective student to even hear about your college. Coaches do more and they do things differently than admissions counselors. And what an admissions office has, what a college campus needs to realize, is that if you have a workforce of coaches out there on the road and on the phones recruiting, they're doubling or in some cases tripling the admissions counselor staff. And so these two offices need to work together. Athletes typically persist and are retained better than non-athletes. So there's a benefit there. And in most cases, graduation rates for student athletes is higher than that of the general student body. So there are all these benefits related to enrollment management, which is a hot topic these days. Campuses that understand this really embrace athletics, the coaching positions, and support what they need, because they will see a huge return on the investment, and you can quantify these things. So in this area, what you need to do is be able to look at your coaching activity, the recruiting activity specifically, and point to specific numbers of how many prospects were contacted, how many applied, how many were admitted, and how many ended up coming, and then what your retention rates are year to year and your graduation rates, because these are powerful numbers. They're black and white. They're not debatable. They are what they are, and you can have a very powerful impact in an
The
argument.
conference will automatically end in 5 minutes.
Second thing is visibility and brand identity or equity in some cases. And athletics does this in a way that I think it's difficult for any other part of campus to do. Many small colleges are part of consortiums for lots of different reasons, and there's peer groups that you associate with. But athletics, you will be out there competing with similar colleges. In many cases, they might be aspirant colleges, schools that you want to be like. And all of a sudden, you're out there, you're being talked about, you're being seen in many different circles with these types of schools that you want to be like. It adds to your equity when it comes to your brand, and you can take advantage of that by understanding the power of athletics. Lastly, athletics really impacts the campus culture, the community of the campus, and campus spirit in general. There's something to do. one of the biggest complaints of college students on many small colleges, well, there's nothing to do. There's no school spirit. There's nobody at the games. Well, athletics can impact these things if athletics is embraced for what it can add in these areas. And the one powerful thing about athletics that I've always talked about is you're all on the same team. So when people go to a basketball game and there's faculty members there, there's the director of financial aid, there's the president, there's other senior administrators all sitting side by side on a bleacher, you're cheering for the same team. It breaks down so many walls and barriers because now you're all on the same team, you're cheering. You're not the faculty member that just gave me a C- on my paper. You're not the financial aid director that denied my appeal. You're just part of the ABC college community. And it's a very powerful thing in a way that athletics brings people together and can add to the campus spirit. So here are some things you can do quickly. 3 things. First, you really need to clarify, define, and articulate the impact athletics has. You need to be very solid on this. Anecdotal stories are great. You know, you can talk about this student or that student who did this and went on to do great things, but you need to start capturing these things. You need to start quantifying these things wherever possible. The anecdotes are powerful, but it's not enough. You need some real data, quantified if possible. Otherwise, qualified data is just as powerful, but you need to capture these things, not just rely on stories. You need to reach out to every part of campus. Reach out and embrace everybody. Athletics touches just about every part of campus. Make sure you're the one reaching out. Too many times, athletics people have a chip on their shoulder and say, well, they haven't reached out to us or they haven't done anything for us. Why should we make an effort? You have to make the effort in order to bridge these gaps and get things moving in the right direction. And lastly, I think you need to share your goals, what you're trying to do in athletics. You need to share your progress, how you're meeting those goals, or maybe in some cases how you're not. You need to be able to share your successes as well as your struggles, because your struggles sometimes are simply a situation where you need to advocate for resources or more support in some ways. You need to be open and honest. You can't just be tooting your own horn and try to cover up anything that's not so great. You need to be completely transparent and honest. But you need to be able to articulate these things with people that matter, your senior administrators and others that supervise athletics or are engaged. I think, again, all these things add up to missed opportunities. Here's another thing. Don't focus on the haters, okay? You've got a typical bell curve where on most campuses there are some people, faculty and others, that just hate athletics. You got people on the other side that really love it and are supportive and are active. And you got a whole bunch in the middle. Don't worry about the ones that hate it. Don't focus any energy on converting them. Focus on the people in the middle who have somewhat of a clue and you can sway to become your supporters. The other thing about this middle group is that sometimes they have a little bit of knowledge, and sometimes that can be dangerous.
The conference will automatically end
They
in
think
30
that
seconds.
they know about athletics, and they might make assumptions based on their own experiences, but they may not have everything that they need. So you need to be able to work with that middle group to educate them and convert them to be supporters. And once they become your biggest supporters, that group, you need to love them up. You need to do things for them. You need to engage them as much as you can. You need to use student athletes as often as you can with your messages. Invite them to
Conference
events.
ending.
Make sure
Goodbye.
that you have invitations from
The conference will
your student
begin
athletes
when the next
to,
party joins.
you have invitations where student athletes are inviting faculty and administrators to come to games, to come to special events, to luncheons, whatever it might be. Student athletes are much more powerful when they deliver their own messages than administrators ever could be. Use them, train them, coach them, but it is very hard for people on campus to ever say no to a student. So you need to be able to engage them in a meaningful way. And I'm going to wrap up with there because we are out of time and I want to keep these on time. But to sum up here, I think what we're trying to show here is that athletics presents so many positive opportunities that are just waiting for small colleges. And they're waiting there and they're just being missed because people either don't understand them, maybe they're fearful, or they just may not know about them. And this is where athletics administrators and others need to be able to articulate the valuable role athletics plays on their campus, be able to connect your work in athletics with the mission of the institution and the outcomes that the college or university is seeking. Because surely you are going to be able to point to some great examples within your program that demonstrate the power and the whole purpose of the college as a whole. And when people start to connect and see that athletics really is a meaningful way for the college to expand its brand, to enroll more students, and to engage more people, they will start to come around. It's a lot of work, but you need to be willing to do it. So with that, I'll wrap up. This has been another episode of Perspective on Athletics. We welcome your comments. We hope that you'll join us again each week. And again, the second Tuesday of each month is live like we were today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mark Majewski. Take care.